Okay, welcome to Movies and Martins, a sometimes weekly podcast about films hosted by two boys who really don't want to have studied critical theory for nothing. From the other side of the country, long way away, is the inimitable, the charismatic, the angel of the north, Mr. Martin Shaw.
It's nice to be here. It's nice to reunite the Martins. And of course,
Very
presenting the show, and the introduction there was the I need to think of an adjective now. It's a list of about 6 of them.
See, so before this recording started, I said, you'll figure it out from whatever I say, based on us freeballing it from when we did our radio show together on film. But,
and then it just happened, and I wasn't quite
instantly
expecting it. I have failed, but I am joined by one, Mr. Martin Docherty.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to give you a list of our top 5 films, top 5 rewatchable feel-good films to watch during these quarantine times. Maybe it'll transport you to somewhere a bit nicer. Although, actually, thank you. We're doing it remotely, so it's like quite nice for us to bond over films we've both seen. Although, as recent political movements have shown us, I could have just gone up to Durham and done it with him.
Yes, fine. You could have just come watched it together.
That's the model we've been given so far, so you might as well go for that. That reference will date this show instantly. So that's good.
It's a coronavirus special. We'll all know.
Yeah. We're if you haven't, I imagine most people listening to this have heard us before talk about films or something like that. We had a show together at university. We both studied English, so we both did critical sort of stuff. Martin's very interested in film, and I watch them. So that's that's our kind of takeaways in the film sphere. So we've got our top 5 movies to watch in quarantine, feel-good films. It's not about how well crafted or how brilliant the film is. We might cover that at a different time, a different show. This is just about why we like watching them again and again and again. Sound about right, Martin?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think at the minute, given what we're all experiencing, I'm not too fussed right now about lampooning or going on about my favourite films for hours and hours on end. I think I just, as been proved, I've been going through my backlog of stuff that I've seen 5, 6, 7 times and just being like, I need to watch that again. There's just something comforting about it. It's friendly, nice.
How would you define a rewatchable film, like a feel-good film? Martin, what would
I think for me, a feel-good film is exactly how it's described. A feel-good film should make you feel nice. It should make you feel cozy. Just something you can stick on. I like a phrase that I borrow from Jack Howard, much more famous video blogger than we are yet. He calls
set your sights high.
Why not?
Positive visualization.
He calls them easy watches, which are things you can stick on and like. I'm not saying you should have your phone with you, but you can do other stuff. You could be writing something, whatever it might be, at the same time.
Yeah. So I think before we start off, we'll do a couple of honourable mentions. Films that I think didn't quite make it onto our top 5 lists, but were ones that are worth mentioning anyway in terms of films that were quite feel good to watch. Number 1 of these honourable mentions being Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I mean, several of the honourable mentions we put down that were very tough to exclude, because Ferris Bueller's Day Off is one of the many films that I've gained taste from my mum. That was just like, have you not seen this? It's well good. And she sat down. I don't know why I said well good. She's not from this.
But yeah, no, Ferris Bueller's Day is a brilliant. It's a masterclass in like how to edit to punchlines, I guess, or edit to like fun little bits of witticisms, and it just goes from scene to scene to scene. It doesn't mess around. There's nothing extraneous. It's just something fun you can sit back and watch as the hijinks unfold. It's quite a nice film.
Yeah, you just let it wash over yourself. That's all you need to do with it.
Yeah, exactly.
The second one we have is Home Alone. Now, I'm interested you've put a Christmas film on here.
I would argue that Home Alone isn't about Christmas. It's about watching Macaulay Culkin brutalise Joe Pesci. Which is a film for all ages and all times, really. I mean, it's something that doesn't like. It's obviously it's set during Christmas, but the Christmas setting doesn't divorce it from any other time.
I can see your point. And
Joe Pesci can and will invade your house at any time, at any opportunity, and you must always be alert. And then you've put on as one of the last of these honourable mentions is Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, I mean, plain and simple, I can't think of a movie that if I need to put myself in a good mood, I can put Singing in the Rain on.
Now, I've not seen the movie, I don't think.
The movie, I think, is the best version.
Is that is it Gene
Kelly.
Something in the... Gene Kelly is the lead, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not seen that. No, I've only seen one production of Singing in the Rain. But
there's a reason that Gene Kelly is, and everyone in this cast. The female lead, and the name escapes me, which is a crime. But because I know as soon as I finish saying this, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember. But
I'm just gonna let you sweat. Here,
I literally can't think of a film that just distills joy as easily as Singing in the Rain does. Everyone in it is just A-grade performances. It's singing, it's laughing, it's dancing. It's just lovely, and it's just easy watching.
You can't think of a better film of that, and you also can't think of the name of the female lead.
Yeah, it's disgusting, isn't it?
It's Debbie Reynolds, by the way. Which I know because whilst you were talking monologuing about the film, I had Google open, so that means I win.
I think as a film fan, I think our podcast has just been halted in its tracks.
And so I think music in film is one of the key things that can make it feel good, which goes right into my number 5 on our Feel Good Films list, which is Mamma Mia.
You took Mom's guitar.
No, I borrowed it. No, what is it? Diaz, Donna Sheridan, and HB, Headbanger.
Headbanger?
I bought her this. It cost me 10 quid plus my Johnny Rotten t-shirt.
That's my choice for this number 5 slot, because I think what's done here is it's a weird choice. Maybe I could see you about to say the word. That's a weird choice.
I was just saying it is not what I expected. I'm not sure what I would have said I would have expected you to say, but Mamma Mia is not one of the films I expect to see on this list.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting one, Mamma Mia, because I really liked the music of ABBA when I was younger. When I had first music thing, it was the little MP3 players that had just had the little LED screen that had the tracks, that had the track thing or whatever you had from the CD on it that you programmed in, and I had that, and I had on that Let It Be by the Beatles. I had some pre-programmed electronic song which I can't for the life of me think what it was called, and I also had a couple of ABBA songs. And one of them was Super Trooper by ABBA, and I love that song. It's brilliant, and it's done. It's that song and that song and how ABBA music works. It's music of catharsis, it's music of low points being turned into something that make you into a really singable thing. I've said that now, and I can't think of an example.
You said really singable, and you can't think of any of the words from Super Trooper.
No, I know the word Super Trooper. So when Meryl Streep is singing the Mamma Mia, the title track, and she's running around this very carefully kind of plotted out and very carefully shot Greek villa. And she's running around a couple of areas because she's just seen her 3 ex-boyfriends all together in one room, and it's just completely shattered her world. And it just the way that's shot around her and her movements throughout that scene. I really like how closely the camera sticks to her. It doesn't do big shots of the landscape while she's singing. It's very it understands the drama of the song, which is a very personal one, Mamma Mia, it's all gone wrong, what's happened, that kind of stuff, and it focuses really nicely on her in that. And that's what I think one of the aspects the film is really good is the camera work. It's very closely shot in certain areas. It focuses on the bits that are important in each song, and it captures those really well. And that it sort of emphasises the catharsis of Mamma Mia songs. And that's what the film does really well. I think it builds its stakes really nicely, and the songs work super, super well in that song, in that film, and they make you feel good in how they employ them. Meryl Streep's performance of Winner Takes It All at the end of the first Mamma Mia film. And it's a very sad song, but the way it's shot, you feel so it's almost purging. It's from what the film set up previously, and it's how it employs songs and the emotionality of those songs really works for me. I think that's what makes it a really fun film. Aside from Meryl Streep having a brilliant performance, I also love the weird dad chemistry between Brosnan, Firth, and Skarsgård, which is just exceptional. I have a weird soft spot for male actors who can't sing a note in music. It's the same thing of Russell Crowe in Les
Yeah.
Mis. He cannot sing a single line of that song correctly, but it's...
But is he having a good time doing it? Yes, he is.
Yeah. But that's what I really like as well, is that they sort of... They know Pierce Brosnan can't sing, and they don't have him sing throughout the entire film until the very end, and he gets his own song, and it's horrible. It's so horrible. But, like, you get the feeling he knows he can't sing. They know he can't sing.
They've put it off until they have to do something.
Yeah, exactly. I think Colin Firth in particularly, and Our Last Summer is one of my favourite tracks and visuals in that film. I think that's really, really nice. Yeah, like I said, it's cosily shot. It doesn't try anything too silly, apart from the SOS song. The way that's on the beach where they throw him into a river at the end of it, and there's like surfers that run in. It's fun. There's a lot of good music being used to create purging emotionality, and because of how it's shot and how contained it is and how reserved at certain points, it's much more personable than the sequel, which I didn't enjoy as much.
Yeah.
And it felt much more. You feel much more a connection to what's going on.
I think the sequel just has a lot more artifice attached to it. Like
exactly.
For example, the thing is, I think obviously, for me, Lily James is a better performer in that. I think her performances are marvelous, but also she's more used to those kind of performance styles. So it feels less personal, like you're saying. It feels more detached because it's like, oh, we've made a sequel that you were all waiting for, so we've made it really polished. And not that the first one wasn't polished, but it's more.
The thing is, the first one isn't super. I'd say it's tight, it's well shot, it's well edited, but it's not super polished. Like the kind of camera work isn't brilliant. It's not fantastic, but like it's comfortable in what it's doing, and it does it very well. Whereas sort of the more ambition of the second film, where it explodes outwards a bit, I didn't quite connect to as much.
So I guess leading on from films that you think have sequels that don't quite pull it off in the same way is my number 5 pick, which is the movie Hot Rod from 2007, which I'm betting almost nobody who listens to this podcast has seen or heard of. So Hot Rod is a 2007 film that was directed by Akiva Schaffer and starring the other two members of The Lonely Island, Andy Samberg and Jorma Taccone.
Ian McShane's in this
Ian
film.
McShane is in this as Andy Samberg's madcap dad, who they have really weird energy between because Rod, who is played by Andy Samberg, who is an amateur stuntman in his little sort of suburban American town, will only be able to earn the respect of his father by beating him in hand-to-hand combat. And that sentence alone should tell you just this film is, for me, just a really dumb, like, emotional. You don't need to have an emotional attachment to any of this film because it would be basically impossible because it's so sort of absurdist and surrealist. Just sitting there going, right, so this guy who rides a moped who wants to be an amateur stuntman and dance fights with no one in the forest and has one of...
Yeah, I currently have a tab open that you sent me earlier called Hot Rod Forest Dance, and the caption is Rod punch dancing out his rage.
Yeah, that...
I do not own any rights whatsoever. Enjoy.
What about the transplant?
Oh, sure. 50 grand. You gonna pay for it?
No.
Of course you're not. Let's face it. You're a kid. You live at home. You got no job. All you're good for is goofing around with your friends on your moped.
You're wrong, Frank. I'm not a kid. I'm a man. I am gonna get you better, and then I'm gonna beat you to death.
You couldn't beat a drum.
Rod, are you okay?
I need to go to my quiet place.
And just the movie is literally just those kind of moments. But everyone in it is doing a really good comedic performance. You've got Bill Hader on form. Obviously, the guys from The Lonely Island. This is sort of an early stage in their career who are doing really well.
Andy Samberg has managed to wrestle Bill Hader out from Happy Madison's evil clutches.
Yeah. Bill Hader is playing this like weird sort of stoner character who's just so vacant for the entire movie and just has this bizarre deadpan delivery of anything he says. And then the only person who's not with everything is Isla Fisher, who plays Rod Kimball's love interest. But because she doesn't seem to get what's happening, that's as funny as everything else. Because every scene she's in, it's like she doesn't quite realize how stupid this film is. which inherently is just quite funny because it's like, how did she not get that this is meant to be funny when he's doing like a street luge on a skateboard and shouting the word whiskey, which is his safe word, to the rest of his team to try and save him and stop him. And the fish is kind of standing there pretending to be sort of like just with a kind of vacant sort of serious expression on her face at the same time. And it's like, what are you doing? Did you not understand what this film was when you signed on for it? I think the main thing to pull away from it is just, I think Hot Rod is a very interesting film to talk about as far as watchable films, because despite it being just this outlandish, really stupid, in some points puerile, there's a lot of slapstick as well. Like, the jokes aren't clever. This is dumb humour, and it's very cool. I mean, you've seen a Lonely Island music video. They are sort of clever in one sense, but they're not, like, there's not levels to their jokes in a lot of senses. And there's certainly no levels to the humour in this. But despite that, it's quite a charming story in that the relation, this really antagonistic relationship with his stepdad, Ian McShane, again, why? Like the aim of him is to the sort of end point of the movie is he's going to do this big stunt to raise money for his father Frank, his heart surgery. And it's quite charming that they managed to do that, and it's one of those sort of classic, like, oh yeah, they make a point of making a joke that they raise exactly $50,000, which is the exact price of his, quote, conveniently priced heart surgery. Hot Rod was initially written as this Will Ferrell vehicle, and I imagine if it had been that, it would have been one of these trashy American comedies that doesn't drop anything new in, it doesn't try and do anything, it's released to a whimper, but at the same time, they took a chance on the SNL up-and-coming Lonely Island kids, and yeah, it may have released to a bit of a whimper, mixed reviews. Commercially, it was a failure, just a commercial failure, but it's still enjoyable, it's still really fun, and the fact that it relies on all of this dumb humour, but I've seen it like 7 times and haven't tired of any jokes in the movie, I think says a lot.
So what you're saying is, they took a chance on him in a stupid
We're
film.
doing callbacks now. Nice.
Yeah, it's great. We've not been recording for half an hour yet. We're doing callbacks. So it's sort of a bit kind of like a farce, is it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like
complete farce. Yeah, like
there's nothing of substance in this film. It's stupid.
sort of moving on in kind of like a farcical nature. We got my number 4, which is Taika Waititi's 2014 New Zealand mockumentary, What We Do in the Shadows, a take on the vampire kind of paranormal documentary sort of found footage conceit.
Read the charges.
Problems we have with Nick. Number 1, you brought a human into our house, which is a big no-no in the vampire world.
Stu's okay, though.
Yeah, so Stu's fine, so I guess we'll just cross that one out.
And it's his best film, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I've seen Jojo Rabbit recently, and I think this tops it in various... Jojo Rabbit's a very good film, but this for me is just... It's in terms of a watchable film, it's almost like putting on a stand-up set from a New Zealand comic and how the deadpan humour works. It's you can just sit back, completely disengage, watch it, and just laugh at the bits where he goes, we're werewolves, not swearwolves. If you want to, you can completely disengage and wait till that moment comes up. There's like really interesting things that happen in it if you do want to sit and like have a little sort of introspect a bit more into it. Like they've got really interesting. I think the prosthetics on some of the vampires, Peter, the scary vampire, like the prosthetics on him are genuinely quite scary. They're very evocative of Nosferatu, which obviously what they were going for there. But like he looks really creepy, and they've got really kind of realistic looking prosthetics on him, which I really like.
It's interesting that on this like minute budget they achieved something that they established this theme of them being like, vampires that have lived in this flat sharing. It's like it for some time. It is grim in this house. It's disgusting.
Yeah. But like when you get the sense that you're introduced to the vampires, like they're funny vampires, and then he goes downstairs to give a chicken to Peter the vampire, and he's terrified of this vampire, and so you're like, uh-oh.
I still jump when they open his coffin.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, it's horrible, and it's almost like there was like setting up like a thing. Oh, maybe he's gonna jump out and kill something later, and then what happens is he sighs a vampire and then dies, which I enjoy. But yeah, it's very effective, deadpan sort of New Zealand comic tone, which you see a lot of in some of the comics from there. One of the notes I've got written down on this is under my suggested talking points for this is Taika Waititi is good, actually, because he is. It's like you can see a very, very obvious passion for every genre he inhabits, and also just the technical aspects of his comedy in terms of how well it's timed, how good he is at keeping lingering on a shot for something to become even funnier and then cutting exactly the right time, and just in general, like, he displaces the vampire myth in such a really interesting way, and I just think it's just funny.
Yeah.
The problem with trying to explain funny films is you can't.
I'm
they are
still
just
amazed
funny.
that so much of it was improvised on set. Like, they had a rough framework for the script.
Oh,
it's
wow!
Because it shouldn't.
Really?
A lot of it is improv, and it shouldn't be as funny as it is because it's improv. But
that's really that makes sense. Thinking about some of the jokes, but they're so well executed that you wouldn't expect that. What's my favourite? The swearwolf thing's quite funny, but my favourite one is going on the net to do my dark bidding, and he's got an eBay open or some shit. It's like
I still think I also think the joke about him being with the age difference when he's talking about dating the elderly woman, and you're like, oh, that's a funny riff, and then he's like, but I'm
96-year-old.
Yeah. This 96-year-old woman with a 400-year-old vampire just gets me every time. Oh, Stu not being able to eat chips.
Good, yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah. Oh, I watched that scene just before we started recording, actually, where he eats the chip and starts vomiting blood. It's like,
I'm over being a vampire.
It's shit. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, yeah. That's what we do in the shadows. Taika Waititi's 2014 vampire mockumentary. If you haven't seen it, it's currently on Amazon Prime, if you have Amazon Prime. If not, it's on the internet somewhere if you look for it.
We do not endorse.
All of them
we don't endorse movie piracy.
We don't endorse it either.
We don't
apparently.
endorse movie piracy.
Speaking of the supernatural, we have your one, Martin.
Yes, I think it follows on quite nicely between funny and slightly spooky. So my...
It follows on nicely. It's almost like I planned
It's almost like we
this.
had a structure. So my number 4 is Zombieland. And I love this film.
You had to get a gun and learn how to use it. Which leads me to my second rule, the double tap. In those moments when you're not sure the undead are really dead, don't get all stingy with your bullets. I mean, one more clean shot to the head. And this lady could have avoided becoming a human Happy Meal. Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
This film, I think, is the perfect, I don't know what kind of mood I'm in, I'll stick this on, kind of film. In that it touches on a lot of, like, it's mainly a comedy, but there is some sort of serious drama to it. It's basically a odd couple family road trip, and just happens to be set in a zombie apocalypse. Like it.
You've written the word zomcom, which I'm a big fan of, in our notes. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So obviously it came out in 2009, and I think that was when zombies were really starting to come into, like, pop culture as a big thing. I can't remember if The Walking Dead had started then already.
The Walking Dead wasn't 2009, but I believe I Am Legend was 2007.
2007. You'd also, you'd had Shaun of the Dead by that point. You'd had zombies coming into realms other than horror already. And I think Zombieland is fun because it had interesting ideas despite this. So that one of the running jokes it has, there's a couple of times where they have a scene which is called the Zombie Kill of the Week, where they just purposely have thought of a ridiculous way to kill a zombie. So the one that's, I think, the most famous from Zombieland is this female priest rings a bell and a zombie sort of toots around this church, and she runs in the house and she just drops a piano on the zombie outside the door. And there's just scenes like that, and it's another one of those films that just has a lot of, like, it's just really punchy and fun.
I've watched this film once whilst drunk at a Halloween party. So that's my cultural reference point for this.
I kind of think that might be the best way to watch it. Like I watched it the first time I saw it was at like a pizza party when I was about 16. Like we ordered about 30 Dominoes and we just sat there and just were like, just put a trashy
30 Dominoes.
Yeah, there's about 40 people there. It's fine.
Oh,
It's
right.
like 2 of us.
I had this picture of like 4 people. At a pizza party, I thought that'd be like a small amount of people. I didn't realize there's 40. Right, makes more sense. Yeah.
No, there's a massive room of us, and we all just were like.
You're telling me you had 40 friends in year 60? That must have been nice.
And the other major thing I think is Zombieland has an unmatched comedy cameo in it. I'm gonna spoil it. It's 11 years old at this point. Like, see it. Bill Murray is in this film, and there's a long long scene where they start going to a load of celebrity houses because it's basically sort of for people who are out of place in normal culture but have kind of found a relative home in the post-apocalypse almost.
Yeah.
And they just start touring celebrity houses halfway through the film. It feels like it interrupts it, but again, it's another one of those scenes of just like raucous fun. And then they just happen to stumble into Bill Murray's house, and he's been pretended to be a zombie to survive. It's almost like they foresaw The Walking Dead, where it's like they cover themselves in blood and guts to sort of make this really deep, harrowing scene where they try and it's really tense as they walk through crowds of zombies. Whereas Bill Murray's just wandering around going, just with a bit of makeup on his face. And it's just brilliant. It's hilarious. Bill Murray's obviously having a great time. Everyone in there, I think, because most of them were unknowns apart from Woody Harrelson, were both on.
Was Jesse Eisenberg an unknown by that point?
Like he was in some indie stuff, I think, but he wasn't. It wasn't the kind of big name that he would be now. So like the Social Network hadn't happened yet.
He wasn't the man who is Lex Luthor. His defining role.
So he hadn't been bad Lex Luthor. He hadn't been in Mark Zuckerberg in the Social Network. So I think he was probably like second to Woody Harrelson, and then you had Emma Stone, who was again quite fresh on the scene, and the name of the young actress in it who plays her younger sister escapes me, but she was also relatively unknown at the same time. And then you just have Bill Murray, so they're bouncing off his energy as like this, like just top tier actor, both in the film as having stumbled on, and you could tell there's kind of a bit of reference from them as actors as well.
Yeah,
and despite it has this very tight structure and sort of scenes where they just go about and like muck stuff up, they destroy like a tourist shop just in reckless abandon. They just smash it to pieces, and it's really sort of kinetic and fun, and just you can watch them getting their frustrations out. It's quite fun.
I also it sounds like a psychopath thing to say, but the shotguns are very satisfying in that film.
It's not
like just the sound editing on like the weaponry and how I think that's a really big component of Zombieland from what I remember is that the sound of it is very gross in parts, but like it's very like kinetic, very impactful. Like it gives the film like this sort of tangibility almost because of how real the sound effects are.
And it lends itself really well to the closing act because it's very light-hearted in most places. Like you've got there's the rules for survival that Jesse Eisenberg sort of narrates, and they play out in little throwaway scenes and visual gags and stuff. But at the end, they get put into practice in this actually quite tense final close, like their denouement in the theme park, where the 2 girls get trapped on this like I don't know what the theme park ride we call, but it's like the one that sort of drops you up and down, straight up, vertically. As zombies sort of, it gets stuck and the zombies start crawling up to them, and it's making loads of noise and it attracts more zombies. And Woody Harrelson's stuck in this tiny sort of souvenir hut with just like pistol magazines lined up on a thing, and he's doing sort of gun kata similar to John Wick, I guess, just shooting through the 2 windows. It's actually surprisingly tense in what is very obviously a comedy everywhere else. I think it handles it really well.
Well, that's what we talk. That's what we talk about that a lot in some of these films. Is that they're like Taika Waititi's farce on like the vampire, like the scary found footage film with this mockumentary about vampires. It still executes tense scenes, like certain elements. Like there's an element where a vampire hunter has entered the house later on in the thing, and it involves in spoilers the death of Peter, the 8,000-year-old vampire, and like that's quite tense and quite a touching moment in the film almost. So that these films have actual like very real emotional weight, and like that can come out in a lot of the action films. It's just when something's, and that's I think something we're going to talk about with one of the films we have on our list later on, is how in order to make a effective parody, you have to understand the conventions of the genre you are parodying, and often when you understand them to that extent, you end up making a really good film in that genre. Just as a happenstance to you understanding the conventions so well.
The last point I want to say is just it sticks around for as long as it needs to. It's about a 90-minute film, and I think it resolves itself really nicely in sort of being like, the characters are named their destinations, where they want to get, and it sort of ends with them as a sort of close-knit group of survivors, but you don't know if they make their destinations, and I was kind of like, this film doesn't need a sequel, it's kind of resolved.
This is the thing, isn't it? A 90-minute film has a special place in my heart just because it's not asking too much of me. It's just saying, all right, you're here for 90 minutes and you can go home. I don't care.
I shouldn't have to look up a strategy of, like I had to do with the Avengers Endgame. When is the best time I can go and peek to miss the least amount of stuff?
Changing tact entirely. Moving on to, both our number 3s are animated films. Mine is from 2002. Holy shit. Treasure Planet came out 18 years ago.
Yeah, doesn't that make you feel old?
I feel so old. Yeah, Treasure Planet came out in 2002.
No, you listen to me, James Hawkins. You got the makings of greatness in you, but you gotta take the helm and charge your own course. Stick to it, no matter the squalls. And when the time comes, you get the chance to really test the cut of your sails and show what you're made of. Well, I hope I'm there, catching some of the light coming off you that day.
Yeah, Treasure Planet is 2002 science fiction sort of action adventure pirate film released by Disney in November. Fun fact, it's the 43rd Disney animated film. And the top question Google suggests is, why is Treasure Planet flopped? Which is good fun. So Treasure Planet, it completely flopped in the box office because it wasn't advertised particularly well by Disney, because I believe it was a passion project of the people who made Hercules. So Clements and Musker, I believe, they really wanted to make this film. This is their passion project, and Disney did not want them to make it, but they entered a deal where they would eventually get to make this film. They had to make Hercules first, which was a mess for various different reasons, but I also quite like Hercules. I won't get into that now. But Treasure Planet is the film they eventually came up with. Again, hour-and-a-half film, 1 hour 35 minutes in totality. I think this film I loved this film as a kid. I've got personal investment in it. When we have a lot of family up north and in Scotland, so we'd have long drives from down south up there, like a couple of times a year, sometimes like every 1 or 2 months, whatever it was. And I guess because my parents became sick of talking to us when we were children, they bought this little contraption, which was like a little portable DVD player thing that had 2 little screens attached to it. You clip one to the back of the 2 front seats in a car, and you wouldn't have to listen to your children then, because you could just put on a film and they can just watch that.
I know the SpongeBob SquarePants movie in and out because of the exact same contraption.
Treasure Planet was the mainstay of this. We absolutely adored this film. It's a reimagining, obviously, of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, and it transposes his swashbuckling adventure onto a Star Wars: A New Hope kind of model of sci-fi film, like a space opera almost. So it's maybe not quite the same space opera you see in Star Wars, but it takes that kind of those aesthetics, the Star Wars aesthetics, the wide open universe ripe for exploring, and it transposes Stevenson's narrative, turns it kind of like a fun kind of archetype almost, and puts it onto this setting, and it's brilliant. And the idea of space pirates is just a good idea. If you put space pirates in your movie, it doesn't matter if it's bad, I will go and watch it.
Yeah, if there's more space pirate movies, please tell us, because we will both watch them immediately.
But yeah, like it casts Jim Hawkins as this as the young Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who gives an incredible performance in this.
Couldn't believe it was. Yeah, I didn't know it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I didn't know until recently, until I did some research on this film. But Joseph Gordon-Levitt adds this, injects because he's a teenager voice acting the character, who's I think meant to be. I can't remember exactly what age he's meant to be, but it feels like he's maybe 14-ish, maybe a bit older. Is that sort of how he's cast as? Maybe sort of between 14 and like
maybe 16.
16, maybe 16, yeah. And he injects a little bit of angst into his performance in this role. Not so much so that it overrides the whole film, but it makes it feel a bit more emotionally investing, but not too dark for the tone for the audience is going for. And obviously it has the inimitable song "Always Know Where You Are" played whilst he angstily flies on I guess it's a space power sailing sort of device.
Yeah, it's kind of like a surfboard.
It's a surfboard but with a sail, and he's in space. And he goes on it when he's sad.
Yeah, that is a good summary of what happens.
And it's really angsty and it's just enjoyable. It's just a lovely watch.
Well, they were developing a new style of animation as well. As part of Creature's Planet.
It kind of pioneers a new style, so it's a bit janky at elements, but I think it looks really pretty, especially the elements where he's flying. There's like a space skiff and he's flying. He brings his hand across it's gorgeous. Stardust in the sky, and it looks beautiful. It's incredible. It was perfect when we were kids as a travel film, because you sit in the car, boring car journey for an hour and a half. Your car that you're traveling in. You're sort of the films of travel, films of moving. You're flying around in space, all this kind of thing in this transitional period. It's great. It's brilliant. Which is why I'd also recommend it as a film for isolation, because it's nice in terms of like a place to go to. It takes you all these brilliant different places. In the same way that one of the reasons I like Mamma Mia that I forgot to mention earlier was kind of like the holiday ideation of a cool Greek island, which you can't normally go to. You get to see one in Mamma Mia. In this, it's the same idea but space. And I also think I realise I've sort of monopolised the chat here, and I do apologise for that. But the small-scale family drama becomes really apparent, and it centres the audience really effectively, and it lets us. And it kind of contrasts with the scale of the film's universe and makes it feel even bigger, because the centre of it is the central concern of it is a kind of an angst about fatherhood and about family and what those concepts mean to a young boy going through puberty, and that's contrasts really nicely with the enormity of the universe and sort of how that stage of your life would feel at that point.
I mean, a brief summary of how I feel about this film is entirely just. The first time I learned it was a commercial failure was a shock to me, because I was like, I watched this hundreds of times as a kid. I couldn't believe this wasn't successful.
Yeah, exactly.
It was mad. Yeah, and just the chat about it being almost an escapist movie has also just reminded me of a film that I probably should have put on, which is the DreamWorks animated film The Road to El Dorado. We can't talk about this. It should have been on the list.
We can do a whole thing about animated films at a later date. That's fine. But yeah, beautiful animation, small scale family drama, and I think also in terms of the themes of fatherhood and what it means to be this boy, I would argue that transposing Stevenson's narrative onto the space film, and especially a cartoon of a space film, kind of brings out those elements a bit better than maybe the original narrative did, or the original text did, because you can animate so you can see what's happening, so you can sort of exaggerate people's facial expressions, that kind of stuff, so you can really, like, the way the eyebrows move in this film when someone's feeling moody is unsurpassed. It's like incredible watching Jim Hawkins' eyebrows just go when he's feeling sad or stuff like that. And having it as a cartoon as well appeals to the right kind of audience. It recasts that kind of older narrative. It's written in 1912?
Yes.
I think?
Yeah.
Was it 21?
It's one of
1912. One of the two. 1912 or 1921. I'm going to look at this later. It'll be something completely different. And if so, I'll add it in post and embarrass myself. But yeah, that's... I think it sort of brings out the elements that make this story relatable. Especially to a new audience. It's exactly the right kind of setting to put it in. Yeah.
And my animated choice is I think probably the most recent film on this list.
Yes, I believe so.
Which is 2018's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
What's up, Danger?
I see this spark in you. It's amazing. Whatever you choose to do with it, you'll be great.
Our family doesn't run from things.
You're the best of all of us, Miles. You're on your way.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man?
You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Like, what's up, Danger?
I would wager, I think, is one of the most creative films that I've seen in the last 5 years. Easily.
I struggled when I think about this film because I adore this film. I really like this film. I think it's incredible. It's easily the best superhero film that's been put to film, and I have a very special investment in Spider-Man. Like that hero means a lot to me. Just from my exposure to it as a kid, one of my best friends at primary school and in secondary school, I became friends with through We both saw someone throwing a Spider-Man toy up in the air, and that's how we became friends. We thought that was cool.
You conspired to nick a toy.
Yeah, that's the first thing we bonded over. And I didn't put it on this list just because I own it, but I've not actually rewatched it as much as I have done some of the other films. So it felt wrong to put it on this list, but I back your claim here. So take me through it, Martin. So what happens?
So as far as my level of interest in it is, Into the Spider-Verse is the reason I will be buying a 4K TV at some point and buying the 4K Blu-ray, because I think this film is just visually just stunning. I haven't seen anything that I've wanted to watch purely to like physically watch it unfold. Yeah. So you talk about watching films as like a whole experience, but I will sit and just stare at it. I want to buy frames of this film as canvases to put on my walls. So I think there are some of the most beautiful things I've seen. The scene of him once he's finished his transition from Miles Morales, like just teenager, to Miles Morales,
the man who is the Spider-Man.
The man who is the new Spider-Man, where he is falling and the city is like above him, falling upwards to the city, where it's literally written in the screenplay as he is not falling, he is rising, which is like, it's just incredible. And equally, the same level of, there's so much detail hidden in all of these scenes. So one of the extras on the Blu-ray is literally like, they talk you through loads of Easter eggs, and they finish that segment just going, but we haven't told you all of them. And it's just like, there is something I'm convinced hidden in potentially every single one of these.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is the Dark Souls of cartoons.
Watching Into the Spider-Verse is the most difficult experience, because I'm like, I want to watch all the amazingly like well choreographed, especially for an animated movie, like well choreographed fight scenes and everything. There's just so much care and love gone into this film that I love it for the craft.
One of the reasons I love this film is because it reminds me of the film's soundtrack, which I adore. The first time I managed to complete a 5-kilometer run, I was just listening to the soundtrack of this film.
Daniel Pemberton is a wizard. The man who was responsible for the soundtrack, Daniel Pemberton, is an actual genius.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean that. Yeah, so do you mean the soundtrack or the score? What are you talking about here?
Well, both, yeah. So obviously the soundtrack, the way they bleed in like reggaeton and hip-hop beats that give this authentic, it's like Puerto Rican and at the same time like Black American blended together. This really sort of strong cultural, this very specific culture bleeds its way in so clearly that's why I love Miles Morales as a character. He has a very distinctive identity in the role of Spider-Man, and that then distinctive identity is then lended to every other character.
My favourite Puerto Rican artist is, of course, Post Malone.
I didn't
no, I'm joking.
I just think that through things like using the music both diegetically and non-diegetically, and using the actual hip-hop beats, also for the basis of the score, blends the two music styles together really well and creates this really sort of, it's got a very distinct edge, especially in the face of, like, 2018 was the height of MCU, like, apprehension, because people were like, oh my god, we're at the edge of the end of phase 3. But Into the Spider-Verse came out and was like the best Marvel film that they've made.
Yeah, so there's a lot of anxiety about the phases and what's coming next in Marvel movies, and then Into the Spider-Verse, as you said, come out, and it showed that none of those things matter. You just need to make good films.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so you're saying that there's a really good melding of the two different cultures in the soundtrack. Like, there's one of my favorite tracks is Familia, which features Nicki Minaj and AA and Bantu. Brilliant track, and just in general, it all flows so incredibly together. And like you said, like the soundtrack and the score are merged so pretty. Like they use the beats for "What's Up Danger" in the scene where he's running to and like that is incredible. Like if you're not, just listen to the soundtrack of this film on its own. It's brilliant. I do regularly. It also is if you're getting into any of this like fitness stuff in lockdown. If anyone out there is, it's great workout music.
It's a banging exercise playlist. It's so good.
Yeah,
and just apart from the actual craft that's gone into it, the thing that gets me in the plot, not to mention just how much I love Miles as a character because you feel such personal connection to him.
I guess.
Yeah, go on.
Is it the uncle?
No. Yes. The uncle is involved in it.
Okay, tell me more.
Father and son drama in movies, for whatever reason, is one of the things that just hits me straight in the gut.
We weren't introspect on that too much here.
I have a very healthy relationship with my father. I do. I love him very much. He's probably going to listen to this.
It's just, I like to imagine, what if I didn't? Is what you're saying.
I'd like to clear up, I don't have any problems with any of my family. I just think in films, for some reason, this shit really gets me.
I'm sort of now tempted just to cut that as an audio bite and just release that rather than the rest of the episode. Just slander you to your family.
Please.
But no, yeah.
I just think, alongside this, it's a very funny movie in parts.
Oh yeah,
but also so charming that this I don't know, 15-year-old has to deal with so many complicated emotions. The scene where Miles, who's been trapped by the other Spider-Men in his dorm room at college, who's been gagged with those spider silk.
Yeah.
And his dad comes and talks him through the door, and you can tell Miles wants to respond to him but can't. And it is just, this animated character is emoting better than a lot of actors can do.
Mm-hmm. It's brilliant. It's really, really well put together.
It gets me every time. And the moment where his dad puts his hand on the door and then he just sort of has to turn away because he knows he's there and can hear him but doesn't get a response. And his dad is deeply emotionally distraught because he's obviously lost his brother that he doesn't... There's a bit of distance there, but he still lost him and cares about him. And he knows his son loves him very much. Oh, that just sort of triangle. It's just beautiful.
And we'd be remiss to not mention that this film contains probably the best Nicolas Cage performance in the last 20 years.
Oh my god, yeah.
Nicolas Cage as as Spider-Man Noir is unfairly good. We're starting to see Nicolas Cage come out as a character actor now. More he was to an extent when he was in action films.
But he was only playing it. But the difference is he was playing himself a lot of the times, whereas now he's actually playing characters. Now he's as a character actor. He was in Color Out of Space, the H.P. Lovecraft adaptation in 2019. He was in Mandy, which was a cult film style slasher film. He's brilliant. Mandy, brilliant.
I've not seen Mandy, but it looks really good. So this is one of my genuinely one of my favorite Nicolas Cage performances of recent years, just because he's enjoying himself, but also he plays the character with exactly the right amount of farce. It's incredible to watch. And that's kind of there's a lot of heavy themes of family in this film, and Nicolas Cage and the other spider people who appear in the film, they are the things that give the light to this film's dark, and it's brilliant to watch. Almost like it's perfectly highlighted a bit of shading in a cell. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And that moves us on to our... otherwise, we would spend the rest of this podcast talking about Into the Spider-Verse.
We would.
So we won't do that for now. Let's move on to our number 2. Mine is the Wachowski sisters' 1999 cyberpunk neo-noir philosophical action beat 'em up, The Matrix. You can literally add as many modifiers to that as you want.
I think you just have to say it's the Matrix.
Almost done. Smell good, don't they?
Yeah.
I'd ask you to sit down, but you're not going to anyway. And don't worry about the vase.
What vase?
That vase.
I'm sorry.
I said don't worry about it. I'll get one of my kids to fix it.
How did you know?
Oh. What's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?
I can sit down, watch this film again and again and again. And I have done. It's the breathtaking action. It still sets the industry standard for pacing and technical mastery. As we just showed with how it kind of that shot has been repeated again and again and again in so many parodies, but also in action movies in general. This idea of like moving around like with these shots in the air. I think it happens in a couple of martial arts movies, remakes that happened recently, like when someone jumps up and does a kick or whatever, they sort of pivot around them with that. I might be thinking of the Dragon Ball film they made in 2009 there, which is a bit embarrassing. Which is not a good movie. But yeah, it's not just technical mastery, it's a really, they built a really strong associative lore, so they have lots of these kind of reference points that feel like they mean something, but they aren't over-explained, and that's what I don't like so much about some of the sequels to The Matrix, is they take time to explain some of the intricacies of the lore that I think are best left for the audience to fill out, personally. It's why I think games like Dark Souls work so well, is they give you really evocative pieces of lore. You're like, oh, what does that mean? That's really interesting. Like the words like the Architect or the Oracle, and they don't explain the mechanics of how they work. They just let you imagineer that for yourself.
And the problems come when they do actually explain them in later sequels.
Yeah, because there's not a good explanation of these things, and like because obviously the film works as well as philosophical metaphor, like for a Cartesian dualism or Platonic theory, Platonic form theory, all these different elements. But you don't have to engage with the philosophy. The film wants you to. It very much wants you to by presenting you the red pill, blue pill, and Morpheus's monologues already want you to engage with the philosophy of the film and how the film is shot as well in certain areas, like the staircase scene where the staircase sort of shifts and they pull back bits of they pull back curtains and like the world is shifted around them. This idea of reality you know around you shifting and being uncertain. The film wants you to engage in philosophy, and the question of was there ever a spoon there, where he bends the spoon with the with his mind. It wants you to engage in its philosophical concerns, but you don't have to. You can just sit back and watch Keanu Reeves kick the shit out of people in slow motion, and still I think one of the most visceral, without like being super gory, fight scenes is the security check-in scene where they turn this first floor building into rubble with like where he opens his coat, he has a whole like whole gun show worth of firearms on him, and that's still unmatched, I think, in terms of like pure destruction, like joyous destruction in a film. And it's just, you don't have to engage in any of the it's so beautifully shot, what are the philosophical concerns of this film. You can just watch a cool movie where Keanu Reeves kicks the shit out of a bunch of people, and it's still
it's a film that I think anyone could sit down and enjoy some part of it, because if you're a massive sort of film buff, there are so many like things that you'll get out of. If you've not seen The Matrix, if you're a film buff, you obviously probably have, but like if you've not seen The Matrix and then you go and see The Matrix, all of the other films that you've seen, action films and all sorts of stuff, will make way more sense, because you're like, oh my god, that's where this came from, that's so cool. The comedy movies, there are so many parodies of bits of The Matrix, because again, it's so central to cinematic history.
And I think also, so it's interesting. So all these intricacies, you don't have to engage them, but they are what makes it an eminently rewatchable film. The 90s sort of aesthetic hasn't aged brilliantly.
It's very green.
I don't. It's very green. I also don't want to see Lawrence Fishburne in a leather overcoat again, because that's upsetting. But the wit of its direction and all these different things working at once, it never once feels super dated or cringy in this kind of aesthetic. It's sort of but I would argue it remains the best cyberpunk narrative that's been put to film. Probably. That's my hot take. My hot take.
The Matrix is
a good film.
Speaking of just the wit of direction, we have a point of convergence in that my number 2 and Martin Docherty's number 1 are the same film, and that is Edgar Wright's incredible film from 2007, which is Hot Fuzz. Oh, Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, we'll put a call into Aaron A. Aronson, shall we?
Please, don't be childish. At least consider interviewing the widow. Martin Blower was clearly having an affair with Eve Draper.
Ooh, and how did you establish that?
Because we sat through 3 hours of so-called acting last night, and the kiss was the only convincing moment in it.
All right, pipe down, Biggin. Yeah, what else you got? Crockett and Tabby?
Skid marks.
No, who's being childish?
There were no skid marks.
I'll let you take the lead on it. It's your number 1. You feed it to me, and I'll jump in.
I'm not sure how much I enjoy the metaphor you've used there. Feed me Hot Fuzz. Yeah. Okay. So it's obviously Edgar Wright's 2007 Hot Fuzz. It's the second installment in the Cornetto trilogy, coming after Shaun of the Dead, and reimagining the chemistry between Simon Pegg and Nick Frost in a new setting, which is a police drama set in
buddy cop action movie. It's so good.
When we talked earlier about how satire films and parody films have to understand the genre that they're sort of jumping off, the genre they're riffing off in order to be funny. You also need to have an understanding of all the technical conventions of that genre, and that means you can often execute them really well, which is exactly what Edgar Wright can do. He has his trademark style of editing, which is a very fast-paced, very tight, very concise.
Every transition is purposeful.
He doesn't he doesn't linger on an edit and then crossfade into something, really, unless he's trying to do something specific. Like my favourite example of this is very early on in the film when it's not Simon Angel, it's Nick Angel?
Yeah, Sergeant Angle.
Sergeant Angle. When Sergeant Angle is transferred to a small town in the country, small village in the country, sorry, he the scene where first Martin Freeman, then Stephen Coogan, and then Bill Nighy all weigh in on as different levels of the constabulary level on why he has to be transferred. The editing on that is so quick and precise and exact, and it's fantastic. And so he goes, "Oh, I wonder what the crew will. I wonder what the my team have to think about this."
Do you want me to get the chief inspector down here?
Yeah.
Yes.
He goes, "Well, let's see what the team thinks about this." And it could be a lesser director might have gone on to have him sitting in a farewell party or whatever afterwards as the punchline of that. The punchline of this joke is he literally walks out of his office and they're all already stood there going, good luck, Sergeant Angel. It's brilliantly done. He doesn't waste any time, doesn't waste any of the audience's time, and that's what I like in these shorter films and in directors that create shorter films, is that they care about the audience's time, and these films do that exactly right. So yeah, and also the conventions and techniques of the buddy cop film that you see in Point Break or Bad Boys 2, all that kind of stuff. The film references constantly through Nicholas. I don't know why I call him Nicholas Frost. That was quite fun. But through Nick Frost's character, the way they reference them and then they execute those ideas perfectly, and the scenes, they have a lot of pace and tension to them, and they feel good to watch. Like the supermarket assault scene is ridiculous, but there's tension involved, and you enjoy watching it because they're moving through a very well shot and very well put together, expertly paced action scene. That it's a farce. It's still a farce, but it's a farce in the exact mode, and it's fun to watch.
It's a farce because it's an American sort of police drama. This would be the action set piece at the climax of one of the films, where basically everyone in the village is suddenly armed to the teeth and is firing against this small team of veteran police officers who at this point have seen no crime whatsoever for decades.
Yeah.
And suddenly everyone and their mum has got guns.
Yeah. And he rides in on a horse, and he has a bazooka.
He's like the Lone Ranger.
I have written down in my notes, films as Rubik's Cubes. I will explain this, I promise, and then you replied, I believe in you. What I mean by a film as a Rubik's Cube, it's what I enjoy about films like Rian Johnson's Knives Out, films like that, and films like you would call Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and I would call maybe The Matrix, is that there's so many moving parts in a film, like different elements to the narrative, different things happening with the editing, and all these different like things that being set up and placed. When you watch them, so there's a lot of things in this film that are put through the principle of Chekhov's gun, which is a basic filmmaking principle, where if you Chekhov was a playwright who, if you showed a gun in a play, the gun would be fired later on in the play. It's like it's economy of information. It's something that's shown to you that's important to the audience. It will be used later. A lot of films that completely eschew this notion have a lot happen that's frittered away and doesn't mean anything. That's sort of a problem with a lot of recent Happy Madison, Adam Sandler entries, is this kind of disregard for information they throw at the audience. What Hot Fuzz does here is everything that appears in this film is used to a very exact degree, and it's so satisfying to watch those individual blocks click into place, almost like solving a puzzle cube. And then by the end of the film and its denouement, all of it comes together and all of it's exactly executed upon, and it brings all these elements that have been planted and you've seen me plant very particularly, maybe not have noticed at the time, all click together. Same thing that happens in Knives Out, in how the murder mystery keeps clicking and changing how it appears every time there's a new piece of information given to the audience that expands upon something we've seen before. It's so satisfying to watch, and that's one of the things I find rewatchable about this film, is, and what feel good. It feels good to see these elements of a narrative click together, and they serve like punchlines of a joke, sure, but they also feel good to watch happen.
Yeah, I mean, you've basically covered all the reasons why Hot Fuzz is good. It's just
I've done it.
It's just a great film. It's executed brilliantly. It's very entertaining. It's very satisfying murder plot.
Oh, sorry, and we didn't. The one thing we didn't cover was the first point I put down is it's Simon Pegg's and Nick Frost's best performances, the career best.
It shows you that Simon Pegg. I think especially Simon Pegg. Nick Frost is obviously very good in it, but I think especially Simon Pegg.
Nick Frost plays the same character in most of these films.
Yeah, Simon Pegg has so much range that he goes from like slacker in the Cornetto trilogy, of which this is the second film, and therefore by trilogy logic usually the best one. He goes from slacker sort of anti-hero in Shaun of the Dead to just cut glass, man by the book, hero cop, to then story 3 where he's like just effectively in the world's end, just a kind of a loser. He's past his prime.
Just a dude,
He's just a guy who's trying to get back with his mates.
Yeah,
and that's just in a comedy trio, not to mention any other films.
And then Star Trek, he's exceptional in, and then obviously in the recent Mission Impossible, like Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, that kind of stuff, he's really good in those as well. But yeah, Simon Pegg's brilliant in it. Nick Frost, I think it's, when I say career best, the thing that's their career best performances here is their chemistry clicks like in no other film they're in this film in particular, just because of the characters they happen to be playing and how maybe they map to their strengths as performers, but just their chemistry in this film is perfect. It's unimpeachable. It's what glues the film together, because like Edgar Wright's an impressive technical filmmaker, sure. The stuff you're seeing on screen happening is really interesting. We wouldn't give a single shit about it unless we bought the buddy cop romance between the two leads, and we do because it's Simon Pegg and Nick Frost being their best.
In a collage of like British comedy talent, which is like, this is what this film is. It's just comedy talent from British history for like the last 20 years. You can't think of a better sort of odd couple to pull off that drama. Like Mitchell and Webb wouldn't matter. You couldn't put anyone else in those roles apart from Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. So
you covered your number 2 and my number 1 just then. Now moving on to Martin Shaw's number 1 feel-good rewatchable movie, which is...
So my number 1 is another Edgar Wright film. It is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World from 2010.
Think I'll make it a decaf today.
Scott Pilgrim!
What did you do with my sister?
So, what can I get you?
Is there anywhere you don't work?
They're called jobs, something a ball like you wouldn't know anything about. And by the way, I can't believe you asked Ramona out after I specifically told you not to do that.
How are you doing that with your mouth?
Never mind how I'm doing it. What do you have to say for yourself?
Can I get a caramel macchiato?
So I think this film is just utterly brilliant. Again, it's an Edgar Wright film, so you know you're going to get something of quality from the get-go as far as the director. But just, I think this is one of the most brilliant adaptations of a property already, in that it uses the best elements. Whilst the story varies dramatically in some points of the comic book, which I've only read the first sort of graphic novel of the series, there are points of contention and diversion from the story between the film and the graphic novels. But the way that it's structured that narrative, which spans 7 entire graphic novels into, like, I think it's about 100 minutes, just around that, into this one really, really tight, structured film. Like, it has one 3 point, which is Scott Pilgrim encounters this. He's the ultimate anti-hero because he never makes a single decision in his life. He is ultimately a loser.
He's Michael Cera.
Yeah. And my point is that I think a lot of the reasons that make this one of my favourite films, both one of my most rewatchable and favourite films, is just everyone in it is in the exact role that they should be playing. And it's like, Michael Cera plays losers brilliantly. He's a loser practically. He's in like Arrested Development, Superbad, like basically anything he is in, he plays that one role effortlessly. So I can't imagine anyone else playing Scott, who's this sort of 20-something who has no direction in his life, has just broken up with his been split up with by his previous girlfriend, and just has his life's gone to shit.
Well, is it in the film? Is it that he's been broken up with, or he breaks up with his high school girlfriend? Like, she's a high schooler and he's in college. Isn't that the?
Yeah. So I mean, like, Envy Adams, his previous girlfriend, who put him in the shit.
Oh right, yes, I see.
Who then for over half the film, he is being told by everyone, and even himself acknowledges that he shouldn't be in love with a high school girlfriend who goes to a Catholic school, and refuses to just acknowledge that and come to terms with any of the decisions he's making, whilst at the same time chasing this sort of like manic pixie dream girl stereotype character in Ramona Flowers, which is kind of like one of the things that you kind of... It's brilliant, it's not brilliant, it's a stereotype that's pretty just damaging.
So this is what's interesting about this is the Ramona Flowers, as presented in the film, has undoubtedly spawned this horrible culture of nerd guys treating girls who don't conform to certain beauty standards or whatever, treating them awfully and treating them like you're my Ramona Flowers, my manic pixie dream girl. And that trope exists in this film. But I feel like, especially I don't know about how, I've not read much of the original manga or comic, but in the film at least, maybe it doesn't do a brilliant job of it, but you're not meant to look at Scott Pilgrim as the good guy. He's relatable to a lot of people, but that's not meant to be a good thing as such.
And this is why I struggle with, a lot of people use that sort of negative culture that this film and the books generated as one of the reasons they don't like it, whereas I think the people who were in that culture fundamentally didn't understand the point of this film, is that Scott Pilgrim is not the person you're supposed to identify with whatsoever. He's an awful character. His crowning moment at the end of the film is earning the power of self-respect in a literal sense to finally overcome the final boss fight, literal boss fight. Video game fueled.
I think the point that we've made to return that is that the reason people don't like it is because of that, is because the film doesn't do enough to separate itself from the potential consequences of presenting a narrative like that. So it doesn't do enough. Maybe it doesn't do enough to distance the audience from Scott Pilgrim. Maybe that's not maybe it's not the remit of the film to have to do that, but maybe that's like one of the criticisms of the film. People don't like it because it presents that stereotype. But I think in terms of talking about a rewatchable film, a feel-good film, the film pulls it off partly because of what you're talking about with the kineticism of the film, aren't you?
Yes. So this film is one of the most sort of energetic, pulse-pounding films that I've seen. It feels like it runs on like 10 cans of Red Bull at any one time. It's Edgar Wright turned up to 11, if you like. Is that his films are already really fluid, dynamic, and every cut is important.
Well, it's Edgar Wright, I think, without a genre constraint that means he has to pull his punches in his editing.
He's not restricted to making it sort of semi-realistic like he might have been in Hot Fuzz, especially in the early half. This is a film that I think I read somewhere, someone argues that basically the entire conceit of it takes place in Scott's head, which I can kind of see.
Yeah, that's true.
Way of looking at
That's just true.
This is just a drama of what he's actually going through in his life.
It's in his head in that Edgar Wright captures the idea of like a loser guy going back and thinking about, oh no, if it ended how I wanted to end it, with this confrontation with some other guy's boyfriend, I would have just killed him with a samurai sword with my gamer powers. Like that's what the film is, and that's what it's dramatizing, and it does it really, really well. And I think I would also contend it's the best video game movie that exists.
Oh, easily. So
yeah.
The reason of that is because it uses the convention of video games and sort of the culture surrounding them to make a film interesting and place it within that sort of effectively genre, but
it doesn't have to use a video game character, because most of them aren't very good.
It's not dramatizing a character because characters in video games are usually quite mute and bland because you're meant to
not that they're bad. Sorry, but they're hard to. They don't work in films, and some of them are just bad characters. Like the Assassin's Creed movie was horrible. Michael Fassbender as Ezio, because Ezio's not a filmable character because, like you said, he's a mute protagonist.
Because it's an interactive medium, so you're meant to inscribe meaning on them yourself by how you play them. So translating to a film where you have to put meaning on them just doesn't work fundamentally. Whereas Scott Pilgrim just uses the staging of like Street Fighter and things like that to make really cool set pieces.
It can pick and choose as it wants what to borrow. Yeah. So that film is a very well put together film. I've watched it a couple of times, not like super loads, but you rewatch it like very often, right?
Yeah, there was one point where I just left it in my TV, and if I was watching a film, I was putting it on. If
I'm not mistaken, like that, it might be what's made you interested in films as a medium, or something to like think about.
It's definitely.
Say?
I think I think that's very fair. It's definitely a point by which. So the first film I remember seeing is like Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets in the cinema. I remember that. But this film has a very important moment in my life, I guess. Because I remember taking my friend from would it be? Yeah, it would have been primary school.
It was
when it came out. Just after his parents had unfortunately divorced, and we went because we were like both really kind of geeky kids. It was like, oh, this is a film about video games and stuff. That sounds wicked. We both go and watch it, and we had like a great time. So it has a personal meaning to me, but also just that was almost like a zeitgeist of everything that we thought was cool when we were like 11.
And it is cool. It's executed really, really nicely.
Yeah.
But also with the pastiche that Wright treats everything that he does with.
And that pastiche element that you get in Hot Fuzz is still present in little some of the best visual gags in cinema, I would argue.
Oh yeah, definitely. Easily, yeah. Did you catch the 10th anniversary watch party that Edgar Wright did?
So, unfortunately not. I read some of the tweets that went along with it because he did it at a really unfriendly time for people in the UK to actually follow it along. But the thing that sums up why I love rewatching it is just everyone people from that cast who are now like mega stars, like Chris Evans, Brandon Routh is like a big deal in a lot of like.
I forgot Chris Evans is in that film.
Chris Evans is in this movie. He has so much fun, but like Anna Kendrick's in it, Aubrey Plaza. These are all massive stars now, and they were all chiming in on how much they enjoyed, like Brie Larson as well, how much they enjoyed being involved in Scott Pilgrim as a piece of cinema, because for a lot of them it launched a career that went like skyrocketed them, but also just they talk about how much they enjoyed working with everyone else, and it's just a really and it's very cool, just really fun.
Yeah, brilliant. That's our top 5 feel-good movies for the apocalypse. We recommend, if you haven't seen any of these films, please go and watch them, because they'll make you feel a bit better during lockdown, we reckon. And definitely check out the honourable mentions. And please, if you enjoyed this, please leave a review or a comment if you're listening to this on iTunes. And if you're watching us on our YouTube stream, please leave a comment below and maybe tell us about what films you like to watch when you're feeling down, or something you could rewatch eminently, whatever either is. If you think we've committed a film crime with any of our inclusions, then please do comment below. And also remind us of any films we might have missed. And then we might do a segment in a future episode looking and going, we should have included that one, which we've done internally already, but I'm sure there are films we've missed out of this that would be good to add to this list. Yeah, so So that's all that we have time for today. So thank you very much, Martin, for joining me on our first episode of Movies and Martins.
And thank you, Martin, for joining me on the first episode of Movies and Martins.
Brilliant, yeah. So I've been Martin. Find me on moviesandmartins.wordpress.com and on The Haven, an actual play D&D podcast that I audio engineer for and am in. And also writing for a show called Babel and doing some narration work there, which is a fun narrative fiction anthology podcast. And you can also find me audio engineering for Open Windows, which is a Sunrise Theatre Company production that Martin will tell you a bit more about in a second.
I've also been Martin.
You can find me writing for whatculture.com in the film and game sections primarily. Also on my own blog, cinematography.wordpress.com. Just put the R in cinematography, you'll find it. And I'm also working on an upcoming theatre project with Sunrise Theatre Company for a virtual theatre festival, which you can see in mid-June.
And we will see you all next time. Thank you very much for tuning in, and goodbye.
Bye. That was longer than I thought it was going to be. Hot Rod was initially written as a Will Ferrell vehicle and was handed off to the then up-and-coming SNS.
I'm gesturing at Martin currently to keep talking, but he paused, so I have to explain. I'm currently plugging in my microphone. I'm just going to cut this bit.
That's fine. So it would have been another one of those inevitable Americans